We just don't know because the studies aren't there, like you said, right? So the problem is when you talk about like the detransition rate, what generally happens is there's no follow-up. The longest study that's been done is 5 years out. The average detransition happens between 4 and 10 years. So we're not capturing all of that. Plus, if you haven't had your primary sex organs removed, you literally just stop taking hormones, and then you never go see your doctor again. And so they never follow up, and you just fall off the rolls. So the stats on detransition is completely false.
So I want to say something. First of all, I want to empathize with everyone here when it comes to healthcare system because it's not always for us. I don't think that doctors are manipulating trans care. I think they're still learning about trans care. And to your point, there is not a lot of research because the research is still new and fresh. You know, detransitioning is a thing, but truth be told, detransitioning is actually rare when it comes to not just wanting to be trans anymore. Now, the underlying factors within that is healthcare conditions, which I actually heard a trans man who is famous talk about, you know, very well. I agree with what y'all were saying because these issues are very, very real. But also, I think it's really because doctors are still learning about our experience.
So I just have to say some things that were brought up about detransitioners, which I found just a little bit ironic, right? Because for a community that is 1% or less of the general population, we can never seem to find it within ourselves to find empathy for it, even if it is the 1% of our community, which is detransitioners, and for the horrific medical malpractice, abuse, mental and spiritual turmoil they go through. It's like, so we want the rest of the world to say this 1% matters, but our 1% doesn't matter. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's not as if they detransition because of, just like you said, the loosening of all the restrictions to get on these drugs. It's like, that's not a good thing. Gatekeeping is a good thing. Like making sure the right people are getting on these drugs so there aren't regret cases, there aren't botched cases. That's what we have to go towards, because right now we're going down the slippery slope of anyone can get on it. Every single person here, I'm pretty sure, just stated that they went in and walked out in an hour or less to get their hormones, and that's a huge problem, especially a child.
Because of things that have happened to me, I can see a future where transitioning for adults is banned. Like, I can, because of everything that's going on with kids.
Yeah, I think most of us are against a ban on stuff like that, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
But I think I had the common ground, though, because everybody here kind of also admitted that we don't have the research.
Yeah.
And so when we don't have the research, and I'll tell you, I think that adults can do what they want.
Facts,
we don't push forward with transitioning children until we have the research.
Yep.
Do the research. And this is actually what GenSpec pushes as well. GenSpec organization, they push to get more research on it. So we absolutely know what this does.
Yeah, that should happen before.
Guidance, the latest
that should be precursory.
Everything that it says about puberty blockers. The next, it says the research. Study, and then it says we don't know.
To your point about gaining research, how do you expect the medical community to gain access to research if we're just preventing these folks to actually go through any of the processes to learn the scientific method of what is happening? Just like with AZT drugs, where we learned that that was actually harming us, and now we have things like Biktarvy.
Yeah, so it's the same way as we have with any research. You have a very select, very heavy gatekeeping crew that you're allowed to, create these studies around. And you need a good checklist to be like, these people show all the actual signs of gender dysphoria. They are having
logical,
very strong
rational,
and in every state that's passed bans on access for minors also has provisions, except for in the most extreme cases, to conduct studies on.
Gender affirming transition is suicide prevention.
No, I disagree with that.
What are unified from?
I mean, obviously, it's a known thing that trans youth are at greater risk of suicide and just suicidal ideations, which are horrible and will plague you and ruin your life and make it awful. And so I know there are a lot of kids in a lot of pain, and growing up as a trans kid, I was in so much pain, and I feel like I could have been spared of a lot of that and gotten to enjoy my life a lot more if I had earlier access to gender affirming care. And even the gender affirming care that I did receive later in my life, and I went on hormones when I was 16 and I got top surgery at 17, that completely changed my life in the most dramatic way. And so, yeah, I think it is life-saving care, and I think a lot of trans people would agree.
I agree as well, too. I think gender dysphoria is a real thing, and we we all deal with gender dysphoria differently. I know for myself or whatnot, there were times I wanted to end it all. And for me, I went to desperate measures to align my body with how I feel on the inside. And for some of us, especially
I am
living in the
glad
South, we
Blossom
don't
did
always
not
have access to
follow
hormone
through
care.
with deleting self deletion.
Dysphoria is a real thing, and
I
we
am
all
I
deal
am
with
glad
gender dysphoria
that
differently.
Blossom did not
I know for
follow
myself
through
or whatnot, there were times I
with
wanted
self
to end it
deletion.
all. And for me, I went to desperate measures to align my body with how I feel on the inside. And for some of us, especially living in the South, we don't always have access to hormone care. So some of us have to go to the black market. We have to do things to our body to be able to align us to where we are not willing to commit suicide. I don't think that's the only way. I think there are other ways as well too. But honestly, sometimes people just want somebody that cares, that wants to listen as part of the regimen to being able to prevent suicide.
I've chosen to not medically transition in my bottom half. Let's put it that way. But, and this is the first time I'm actually saying this out loud, but I am having facial feminization surgery. And that was an incredibly ridiculously difficult journey, even as an adult who has a really good job and access to really great healthcare. But I still had to go through so many hoops, and I was still denied by insurance. And in my own personal life, I've also struggled quite a bit with mental health, and a lot of that really relates to certain parts of my body. Like I always hated my body when I was younger, and I didn't understand why. And and I was always dressing, as like a cis male, and I just had all this stuff just didn't fit. It just didn't feel right, and it was just like this darkness in my life. Like I just wanted it, gone. And I just learned to live with it. But then eventually, like, after figuring out who I am and all that, like now I know like this is life-saving care. Like this for me is life-saving care. Like who knows where I could be in a few years had I not known who I am and had access to care.
How y'all doing?
I think too often we hear, that if we don't affirm our child's, gender identity that's different than their sex, then they're going to commit suicide. We hear this
That's
all
the
the time,
fear-mongering.
especially from the detransition
The
community,
emotional
whose
blackmail.
parents were told this and it was
Yep.
manipulative.
Yes.
We hear
Deceptive.
politicians say this all the time when they're trying to, stop bills or pass bills. The problem with that is that's the same line that abusers use. So when you're in a
romantic,
relationship,
familial
if you leave
relationship,
somebody,
relationships,
and they say, if you leave me, I'll
friendly
kill
relationships.
myself, then that is an abusive situation.
Yes, emotionally
And
abusive.
It's not,
To
so
specify.
that's the premise we start with. Transition, I mean, we're all here, we know. Transition is not an easy process. It takes a heavy mental toll. And so I really think that if you're already suicidal, you have to get that in check.
Yes.
You have to be in a healthy place before you can.
You have to think
about
logically,
going through the
sagaciously,
medicalization of
prudently.
transitioning. You can socially transition. I think that's absolutely fine. But I think that before you
don't
even
have
think
to
about medically transitioning, then I think you have to have your head right before that, and hormones will make you feel kind of crazy anyways. So I think that's why
it's not preventing
crazy.
every
See,
person that
when it comes to
feels that he or she is in the wrong body from deleting oneself.
Fine. But
It's causing
before you think about
it
medical
causes
transitioning, then I think you have to have your head right before that, and hormones will make you feel kind of crazy anyways.
I am talking about the gender change surgery that doesn't prevent everybody from it doesn't prevent everybody it does not prevent or preclude all people who feel that they are in the wrong body from deleting oneself. I think, yeah, that gender change surgery that cost a lot of transitioners to want to delete, to self-delete. It's
think about medically transitioning, then I think you have to have your head right before that, because and hormones will make you feel kind of crazy anyways. So I think that's why, it's not crazy. You can socially transition. I think that's absolutely fine, but I think that before you even think about medically transitioning, then I think you have to have your head right before that, because and hormones will make you feel kind of crazy anyways. So I think that's why, it's not crazy.
See, when it comes to gender affirming care, I appreciate everything that
different people that got the surgeries.
And I thank God every day that this was the right decision for me, because I have friends like Richie who
damage, irrevocable, irreversible. They have infertility. Yeah, it's crazy, man. A lot of there's a plenitude of horror stories, bro. Certain people talked about it on the Jubilee a while ago. The detransitioners, certain detransitioners talked about their experiences, bro.
It's not crazy.
See, when it comes to gender affirming care, I appreciate everything that gender affirming care has done for me. And I thank God every day that this was the right decision for me, because I have friends like Richie who it wasn't the right decision for, and now he's missing genitals.
Crazy, bro.
When it comes to it being life-saving, the reason I didn't step forward, even ask somebody who might agree with that prompt, is because correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Just because something is related to another thing does not mean it directly causes it.
Okay. There's a little thing called a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And sometimes when we create a narrative, it can kind of take on a life of its own. So I know there's a lot of talk about suicide statistics in the trans community. And interestingly, almost all of those statistics come out of LGBT activist organizations who have an incentive to put those numbers out to portray this image that we are suffering greatly, we're under attack, and that all of those suicide rates are due to societal mistreatment. And when these kids are being told, like you said, when they're going into these doctors are telling their parents essentially emotional blackmail.
Yes.
They're saying, trans your kid or your kid's gonna die.
Crazy,
and they say it in front of the child. And they set up this false dichotomy as if those are the only two options moving forward. And here to tell any child feeling any type of way, those are not your only two options. In fact, there is a vast array of options in between and around suicide and transition. Therapists and doctors aren't even legally allowed to say, no, you're not trans, you're actually experiencing A, B, or C. And that's the case with detrans people as well. They have this huge host of issues: depression, body dysmorphia, anorexia, eating disorders, maybe sexual abuse in their past. People don't know that a long observed symptom of sexual abuse is wanting to be the other gender to cope with it. So this has been in textbooks forever. So I just think, I'll wrap it up really quickly, I just think it's a false dichotomy that it's either death or transition. But with that said, I agree with you. I appreciate everything the transition's done for me, but it's too much of a roll of the dice, and I think it's unhealthy telling people, do it or you're gonna die.
So for the LGBTQ organizations, we also have to remember that they are relying on reputable resources. And a lot of those reputable resources are the medical research that has been put out there. So all they can do is take that information and be able to disseminate that into the community. And to be quite honest with you, hold on just a second. To be quite honest with you, and let's also be clear that these researchers are also collaborating with these organizations because they are the ones that have the most outreach to the community that they need to serve, which is the trans community. Because oftentimes the reason why nonprofit grassroots organizations are created in the first place is because there was no place for us. And so it is really hard to get that research to be able to do that. We can agree to disagree, but the research has not been completely fulfilled yet because a lot of these people don't even know about our experience, and that is why it's important that we make it very clear what we need to do.
There's also, speaking of the numbers that come out of LGBT activist organizations, there was a little number that the life expectancy of a trans woman was 35. That was rescinded a couple years ago after like over a decade of that being like just factually, shared. And I always thought that my life was statistically going to end at 35. So, but those numbers were based on, by those organizations, prostitute deaths. So it's not always the most reputable numbers they're getting. You know what I mean? And these activist organizations are political too. We get caught up in calling them activists, and we think it's this emotional, spiritual thing.
Yeah,
but they're
not
political
every
organizations.
Yeah, so I am an activist, and so a lot of what you're
website
talking about
that's
really was focused more on.
not every source that's well known or big is reputable, reliable, trustworthy. Not yeah, bro.
Like over a decade of that being like just factually, shared. And I always thought that my life was statistically going to end at 35. So, but those numbers were based on, by those organizations, prostitute deaths. So it's not always the most reputable numbers they're getting. You know what I mean? And these activist organizations are political too. We get caught up in calling them activists, and we think it's this emotional, spiritual thing, but they are political
Not
organizations.
every source
So I am an
is
activist,
reliable.
and so a lot of what you're talking about really was focused more on Black trans women, because Black trans women do not live past the age of 35, because oftentimes it is our group within the trans community that is often murdered, we're often harassed, we're often discriminated against, and so a lot more of that focus has had to be around Black, brown, indigenous folks, because oftentimes the research goes missing for us.
They sourced it from prostitutes, though. That was the source of
But
that.
see, the thing is, though, even when we talk about prostitutes, trans women have to sometimes participate in sex work to survive.
But they based it off cis prostitutes. Sorry, I'm done. It was
Yes.
just, it was false number.
So from what I understand is a lot of that focus has always been around Black trans women, because we do not get to see the age of 35. You are in a place, when I say privilege, you're in a place of privilege where you do not have to worry about the harassment and discrimination that I face. I face as a Black person.
Here we go.
I face as a Black person.
Here we
I'm
go.
not going to say that you do not
With the
experience
wokeism,
harassment
bro.
or discrimination. That's not what I'm saying, because like you said, you're a person of nuance, and so follow me here. When I come as a person of color, as a Black trans woman, you and I do not get to have that same experience. There are more rooms
That's
that you get
facts.
to walk in that I will.
Blossom was in the White House, bro.
And one thing about it is,
She
that's
got
why
to-
it's important. Like someone like me has to create her own space.
Privilege
to
is
be able
not
to
it's
counteract
not limited
what
to
you're
one
doing.
race,
And
like I
I'm
said
not saying-
before.
And I'm not saying that you don't. But what I'm saying
There's a
here is, what I'm
plenitude
trying to
of
get
privileged
you to understand is my
Black people,
Blackness
privileged,
should not have
privileged Black
to pay for
people.
your whiteness that is destroying.
Yeah, Blossom is bugging right. She's bugging right now, bro. Yeah, bro. I don't hate Blossom, but I don't venerate the wokeism. I don't venerate.
How you gonna say that
Venerate
at the end?
the-
What you're talking about too is there's not the research. You're right. There's not. Everybody likes to cite the Turbin study, and Jack Turbin is a complete activist. You can just go to his Twitter account and see how actively
That is destroying my community.
I'm destroying your
Blossom was
community.
got to go to the White House, bro.
what you're
That
talking about too
proves
is there's not the research. You're
that
right. There's not. Everybody likes
Black trans women are not oppressed. They're not marginalized, bro. It is this negative programming, the mendacity, the narrative, the
For
canard.
your whiteness
It is deplorable, bro.
destroying my community.
I'm destroying your community.
Yeah, the negative assuming.
How you gonna say that and then that's the end?
Yeah,
what you're talking about too is there's not
Blossom
the
is
research.
saying
You're
Blair
right,
is
there's not.
privileged just
Everybody
because
likes to cite the
she's
Turbin
white.
study,
That's
and Jack
crazy, bro.
Turbin is a complete activist. You can just go to his Twitter account and see how actively involved he is in this and how financially.
What was his name?
Jack Turbin. Okay. And you can see how much he's financially gained off of this study. And the issue is the study is based on a survey. And so it's based on a survey of adults. And so when you're doing surveys are not scientifically accurate. They're the least accurate way to do a study. And so when we're basing all this medical care off of a survey. It's a huge issue, and it doesn't serve, it doesn't really, and that's what they're citing to prove that, gender affirming care reduces suicidality.
My question is, if they're using a survey in terms of how they're gathering data, what do you suggest then to use a tool then to gather data? Because from my understanding, a lot of those surveys are actually more accurate because folks are actually not in front of somebody, so they're more comfortable to answer these questions. Again, you can have a difference of opinion, but what tool then do you suggest folks to use if they're not using a survey then? How do you gain that data?
Well, you're talking to therapists who can speak, they can't violate HIPAA, but they can give statistics on their patients. You can look and see how many people have entered into facilities because they were suicidal on that. And then you can go back and see if we gave these same people gender affirming care, how did it help them? And I see a lot of, again, I go back to the detransition community, because we affirm their gender so much, there's so much, they're now having issues. They're contemplating suicide at a higher level as well.
I enjoyed this debate for what it was. It was quite ugly at certain points.
Undoubtedly.
And I wish that it was all trans people on the panel, because that would have been more appropriate and more fitting.
You're so offensive.
How is Blair offensive for saying
Okay.
that?
Well, I find a lot of things over here offensive as well.
That was not hateful.
And I have to.
How?
Trust me, this viewing is more than mutual.
Yeah, the
But I will
non-binary
say that
person is
It's
bugging.
very enlightening, and I hope to be back at Jubilee.
Blair never
I
said
definitely
F
think this was
non-binary
interesting. Obviously, I
people.
don't think we have a lot of common
She doesn't
ground
hate
on a lot of things,
non-binary
but I think we
people.
found some. I think what most conservatives in general believe is, as an adult, you can do what you want with your body. I talk to
Facts.
conservatives all the time. We don't allow children to make decisions for themselves on a wide range of issues, and that's why we don't let them, mutilate their bodies.
I mean, it was educational, enlightening. I got to learn a lot, and it's nice meeting all of you.
I liked hearing the different perspectives, and I feel like even though
I think
definitely
Shane
in my
on the
beliefs,
liberal
like, I
side, he
understand
was
where things
less
come from.
difficult
I
than
just
the
do not
non-binary
agree
and
saying that
Blossom.
everybody on this panel
But
is not trans. I think it's bullshit.
I think
And I think you're
Shane
trans
is
and you're
still
a part of
woke,
my
but he's
community.
less difficult. He was less difficult.
Despite all of the madness, enjoyed conversation with all of y'all. I love debates. We don't have to agree with each other, but these conversations need to continue happening because they're not happening anywhere else. And so until we're all creating more platforms around this for ourselves so other people can understand, then let's keep at it.
I mean, honestly,
The other
regardless of
liberal, he
my
was
interaction
less
with Blair
difficult.
here today. We are all, for the most part, I think,
The
mostly
one
in an
in
echo
between
chamber in
Andrew
our
and
lives.
this, and
So it's nice, actually,
the
to be
one
in front of all
nodding,
these
he-
people, especially ones who don't see the things the way I do, because it also opens my eyes to see
a person was
you know,
less
like,
difficult
maybe
too.
I could rethink X, Y, Z.
But
Or maybe
Blossom
there's
and
something I learned today.
the
I'm not
non-binary,
closed off to learning something new.
they were
or to changing
bugging.
my mind, because I've done that before and I can do that again, and I will evolve as a human being.
All I have to say to the general public is start thinking of reasons why you supported doing this to kids.
And to that point, it's just I'm hoping that folks will be able to understand why the activism is there and what it is, because generally there may be mistakes made in that light, but at the end of the day,
All Blair was
we are,
saying,
as trans people, trying to
this
gain
was supposed to
access
be a
society in a
an
healthy,
exclusively
safe way,
trans debate.
and also see a future
But
for
a
ourselves, which is
non-binary
something that I
person
never had
decided to
access
jump
the
in
way that I grew up in a lot of that ideology of not being allowed to do things when I was
partake
18, even though I knew exactly
in the debate. Yeah, shout out to Blair, shout out to Sarah, shout out to all four trans conservatives. Shout out to no hate for anybody in the debate, but Blossom was bugging, the non-binary person was bugging, and resorting to attacks, personal attacks, low blows, immaturity, childishness. Yeah, that was whack. But no hate though, no hate for the non-binary person or Blossom. Blossom was bugging. Yo, she race hustling, race baiting. Yo, the wokeism is wild, bro. Blair was not born with a silver spoon, bruh. Not all white people were born with a silver spoon, bruh. So yeah, the fact that Blossom slandered Blair White is odious, bruh. Blair, all Blair was saying to the non-binary person was that this was supposed to be an only trans debate. Only, if this is supposed to be a trans debate, only trans people should engage, should participate. Not non-binary is not, it's not the same as trans. That's what people gotta know. That's what people gotta understand. Yeah, bro. Shout out to Blair. Shout out to the logical people in this debate, man. People that did not resort to ad hominem attacks, to vituperation, to verbal abuse. Shout out to y'all, man. Let me know what y'all think. Give me y'all candid thoughts. Yeah, man. One love to the family. One love to the family of DTA. One love to the family of DTA. Elevation before, no GTA, man. I'm gone.